I think it's working. I need a little bit of that right now. Anyway, no, it was amazing. People told me their heartfelt stories, and I'll remember this forever. And it's a testament to these guys. They put this together and gave us all a reason to get back together again. So I want to thank them for gathering all this stuff together, putting it in a beautiful setting, and giving people a reason to come to Saratoga Springs or Wilton. And I have to say, it's as I said earlier when I cut the ribbon, this is a dream I didn't know I have. So with that, I will, I guess we're going to open the floor to questions. I guess you guys probably don't have any questions.
Chris, thank you for coming. In let's say the 90s or whatever, two of the ways that you would know that you have arrived is when you've been satired in Mad Magazine and on The Simpsons.
Yeah.
And you got both, so what was your reaction to both?
I still have those Mad Magazine drawings, so obviously they meant a lot to me. I grew up with Mad Magazine. You know, it's I think most wholly forgotten now, but it was, if you made Mad Magazine, you knew that you had irritated somebody. And The Simpsons, my office was kitty corner from The Simpsons when I was on the Fox lot. So I got to know a lot of those writers and producers, and one of those producers is actually a good friend of mine. So I have a feeling that it wasn't just the X-Files, it was that I walked past and glared at their offices every day, so they had to placate me.
Next question, raise your hand. Right there.
Chris, can you share with us like one of your favorite, funniest moments from being on set?
Of the whole show?
Sure.
Oh, wow.
I mean, you can go season by season if you want.
Okay, I'm going to tell you a really obscene one. This is one that Dave and I are still very good friends. He reminded me the other day that he used to call me when he was sitting on the toilet. I know, too much information. Anyway, and that's when I told him he's a producer too. How's that?
Next question. Right there.
Hi, Chris. I was wondering if you recall when was the last time you've seen the pilot before tonight?
Actually, when I was watching it, I realized it's actually been, I've seen this pilot, you know, countless times, but it's been a long time since I've seen it. It actually I got kind of emotional because there are so many scenes in it that are, I mean, when we made it, those scenes have personal memories for me. Actually, I could talk about almost every scene in there, about how we got it, what the problems were. That scene in the graveyard, I probably told this story so many times, but I'll tell it again. The script had Scully howling at the moon. Do you know this? And she actually tried it. She actually tried howling at the moon, and she was so cold, and we had all this artificial rain on her that it was unusable. But I could talk about every scene in the show. So keep asking questions.
Right over there.
What would you say was your best idea from the show? And then what would you say is your favorite idea from the show?
Well, the best idea for the show was the skeptic and the believer. The show is the hit it became because of Mulder and Scully, because of David and Jillian. If it weren't for them and what they brought to the show, it wouldn't be the show it was. So that was a great idea. I was inspired by, the show's nothing like Kolchak the Night Stalker, except it's got a guy who believes in stuff that no one else believes in. But it was inspired by Kolchak the Night Stalker, a show that I saw. It was actually a series, short-lived series, that I saw when I was a teenager, and it stayed with me. And I remember I pitched the idea to the X-Files to Brandon Tartikoff at NBC, and he yawned and looked away from me, and it's like, go away, kid. And then when I pitched it to, you probably heard this story a million times too, but I pitched the story to Peter Roth at 20th Century Fox, who had hired me to write television pilots. And I think he nodded and didn't yawn, but we literally walked upstairs to the network offices and pitched the show. I pitched my heart out, and the answer we got back was, no thank you. But Peter believed in it enough to get us a second meeting, and that's when I sold the show in the room. I had actually gone on a vacation right around that time, and I met a psychologist who gave me a study, what's called a Roper survey, which told me that a large percentage of Americans believe in the existence of extraterrestrials, and a smaller but it's not insignificant number believe that they have had contact. And I brought that survey in and gave it to the Fox executives, and I think that showed them that there was 9% of the viewing public was their audience, so that was going to at least be a 10 share. I hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
Yeah. You want to tell people what I had for dinner?
I was wondering, for watching it, I was thinking about the first episode, the second episode, and how Jillian's look had changed so much. How much time actually was it between the pilot and the second episode?
There were
What was that period like?
Yeah, there were months that went by, and they were really nerve-wracking for me, because you don't know when you make the pilot if it's going to make the cut. And there's a story, I don't know if you've heard this story too, where the pilot screened for executives beyond the executives I pitched to, kind of the rank and file and the brass, I should say. And Rupert Murdoch, the the guy who owned 20th Century Fox, was in the room, and so the lights come up at the end of the pilot, and everyone kind of doesn't know how to react, and they look to him, and he starts clapping, and so they all clap too, because they want to keep their jobs. But I think that was the moment we knew that we were a go, and a lot happened in those months leading up to the beginning of filming of the first season, which was in between. I hired I made a lot of really smart hires, and a lot of them were really lucky. People that were friends of friends, and people that had worked for Peter Roth, and the name I'm bringing up as the guy who didn't yawn. And so I just made a lot of really good hires, and those people ended up writing some of the best X-Files episodes. You guys probably know Morgan or Wong. Thank you. They continue to be friends of mine. That's actually a testament to those people, is that we've remained friends through 30 years of the show. Anyway, yeah.
I know probably every episode you wrote is special to you, but besides the pilot, is there one anytime of the whole season that is one of the most meaningful?
Yeah. I want to say one of the first episodes that I really loved that I wrote was The Host. And I told somebody I was going to tell a story about The Host, and you may have heard this story before, but I love this story. As you know, the creature crawls in a porta potty, and you see him down there in the porta potty. And that came as a result of something that my mother told me when I was a kid. She told me that, and this is horrifying as a child, she told me that there was a guy who actually went into campground porta potties and covered himself in trash bags and let people go to the bathroom on him. So I want to thank my mom for that The one from the first reboot? Yeah. I'm not sure what your question is, but what is my reaction to the fact that there was a pandemic after that? Oh, I was thrilled. That's why I'm wearing a mask today. I'm so thrilled. That was just complete coincidence. That episode came about because the woman, I don't know if you guys have heard of Anne Simon, she was our science advisor. Yeah, very important to the show, very important to an episode called the Erlenmeyer Flask. That's really her first contribution. Anyway, she and a woman who was the head doctor and the person who kept tabs on the blood supply in Toronto, they had become friends because of the X-Files. They teamed together. If you see the credits, they get a story by credit on the episode. And so they were, Anne's a virologist. Dr. Fearon was a serious doctor with a love of the X-Files. They helped come up with that story, and there's something that actually, it's funny, it made a big splash for a time, and I haven't heard about it much. CRISPR-Cas9. If you've heard of this is where they are able to insert genes into sequences that it's going to change the world, and we played with that. So we played with real science, which is always what makes the X-Files the show it is that it's science-based. If it weren't for Scully, I tell this story, but it's true, if it weren't for Scully, the show wouldn't be the show it is. It's her science that makes me tearful. Anyway, that's the truth.
So thank you so much for being here tonight. My question was, thinking to Scully's pregnancy at the end of the series, was that something that you had originally planned before the revival or during the revival?
It's a really good question, and it's a controversial question with a controversial answer. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to end the series, and then I gave the actors an incomplete script because I was torn about how I was going to end the series. But I wanted to make it. First of all, I think that cements the relationship in a way that the first pregnancy didn't quite. The fact that Scully has been written that she was 54 when she got pregnant is a biblical thing for me. Abraham and Sarah got pregnant when they were in their 50s. So I think that's not a stretch and is plausible science. But for me, it was something that is miraculous, and as miraculous as their relationship. So that's why I chose to do it. But I wasn't quite sure. When Jillian started saying right near the end of the show that this is the last time she's going to wear the wig, and she was, finishing her run on the X-Files, it really, I wanted that scene on the pier to be about that relationship that had begun in the pilot, where that's one of the sexiest scenes in the pilot, where she's got her underwear down, and that it would end up with Scully pregnant when they barely had kissed on the show. I'm going to call on you first in the foreground here.
Great. Me.
Yeah.
Okay. Going back to the pilot, pitching to the networks, how many story outlines did you kind of have in your pocket if someone said yes? And then how much of a mad scramble was it to go from pilot to
Right.
series?
The whole series was a mad scramble. I'm telling stories about that. But I had actually come up with, and it's actually been lost, and I'm sorry that it has. I came up with a pitch document that basically told what kind of stories we're going to be telling about the occult. I actually found out the FBI had done investigations into ritual abuse and the occult and had come up with nothing, but that was actually an inspiration for me too. The FBI had actually conducted those investigations. So I had come up with stories like that and themes like that that helped to sell the show. So I kind of knew where I was going, I just didn't know how I'd get there. And that's actually something I used to say about the show. It's like Lewis and Clark. You know where you're going, or you think you're going, but you don't know how you're going to get there.
In terms of extraterrestrials, do you believe, or do you want to believe?
I want to believe. I wrote an op-ed for the New York Times. Did anyone read it? Yeah, some people read it. Anyway, the government recently came out with a report on UFOs, and the New York Times called me up because they think that I know everything about UFOs. And let me tell you that I don't. But they wanted me to weigh in on the what they call UAPs now, unidentified aerial phenomena, and what I thought about the report coming out. And I said I thought the report, the UAP report, was DOA. I said it's going to reveal nothing. And I wonder, like everybody else, what those Navy pilots are seeing when they see those unexplainable objects flying around them at supersonic speeds and doing maneuvers that conventional aircraft can't. So you can't doubt these pilots or these videos that they have. So I want to believe. Yeah.
Kind of a follow-up to that, to the alien question. You know, we're all like long-time fans of the show. I loved it as a kid, but I never believed it was real.
Yeah.
But then that report came out, and the government was like, yeah, we've got an X-Files office in the Pentagon. We didn't tell you.
Yeah.
And after that, I started reading everything. And it blew my mind that you and your team was putting that stuff in TV 30 years ago. And it's basically true. It's like sort of happened.
Yeah.
And I just want to personally thank you for the seriousness in which you did that, and that you did take it seriously. You modeled for us how to believe impossible things, and I think that's really important. And I'm grateful for that. My question, though, is about the UFO research, because there's a lot of it in the show. Can you talk a little bit about your relationship to the research and UFOs, which is like a rabbit hole, and how did that change the show the more that you read?
Right. Well, I'll go back to Scully. It's about science, and the show starts with science, and we take off from there. And it's the what if question. What if, if this is true, what if it weren't true? What if this came as a result of it? What is the unexplainable part? And I was going to say something else about your question. But you realize the X-Files, this is the amazing thing to me. The X-Files was on television before the internet, or right at the dawn of the internet. So now with a push of a button, we can research the hell out of everything. We can learn 100 things in half an hour. We had a team of researchers that we would we used, and they were kind of our go-to team. And it was the hard way. And I have to say though, it was the personal way. It wasn't the answers that you'd get, impersonal answers you'd get on the internet and the crazy answers you'd get on the internet. You'd actually get people, and a lot of it was real science, coming back to you with hard facts and evidence. And so I think the show benefited from not being a product of the internet Wikipedia phenomenon. I love all these questions. Okay, I'm going to go way to the back. You.
Hi, thanks. So speaking of Scully, obviously we're all familiar here with the Scully Effect and how she had an impact on women in science. When did you learn that she was, as her character, having an impact on women going into science into different fields? Did that play any role in her character development in the show?
Okay, I'm going to tell you, I've got tinnitus, which means I have constant ringing in my ears, which is an unexplained phenomenon. So I didn't quite hear your question, and so can you repeat it succinctly?
Sure, and usually I'm super loud, so that was a surprise. So I was saying, speaking of Scully, we all know about the Scully Effect and how she's had an effect on women in science.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering when you first learned about the impact that she was having on women going into more scientific fields, and if you used that to help develop her character throughout the show.
I can speak to the Scully Effect, which is dear to my heart. And I talked to women here today who told me that, one person works in the Justice Department, and people became PhDs and doctors. There you are. And so, can you imagine that, this pilot would launch careers and paths in life? And, I'll get tearful because it means so much to me. I'm going to stick with the winner and go back to her table again.
So I know that most of the people at our table at least have expressed this already, but how do you feel knowing that this TV show that you created like almost 30 years ago now is still bringing people together like this?
Yeah, that's a mind blower. That relationships could have begun. I just talked to somebody over here who got married on October 13th. I once went to a wedding, a stranger's wedding who were getting married on October 13th because they asked me to. And it was a good reason to go to Las Vegas. When people came back together, and I was introduced to a little kid today whose name was Fox.
Oh, yeah.
And that's heavy. I don't know, that's the answer to that question. It means the world to me. And I'm going to ask somebody closer so I can hear them.
I read somewhere that you had previously, before the X-Files, written for a surfing magazine?
Yes.
Nice. Speaking of cell phones and the internet, how was it like transitioning writing for like a surfing or just a magazine in general to writing TV scripts or just submitting these? I mean, you went from, it just seemed like writing for the surfing magazine or being editor rather.
Right.
But just now you're just transitioning to a different type of like. Anyway, I just wouldn't speak on that if you would.
I surfed a lot less once I started working in Hollywood. I can tell you that. Well, what happened is that I met my wife, who was a screenwriter, and she said, "Do you have any stories to tell?" And I said, "I do have a story to tell." I told this story earlier today to somebody. I do have a story to tell, and I wrote that script, and I showed it around, and it got some attention. And but I actually got an agent as a result of that script, which is also a result of the woman who became my wife. And the agent said, "I think you better write a second script." And I wrote that second script, and one day I was a surfer, The next day, I had a 3-picture deal in Hollywood with an office and a secretary. And that was it. That was 7 years before the X-Files. So it took me 7 years of hard work. I used to pay my mortgage right at the last day before the penalty phase. Because I didn't have any money. Those were, for me, I look at those days as formative days, and I look at my surfing magazine experience. I was telling the story to somebody else today. I'll tell everybody anything they want to hear.
All of it.
Anyway, surfing magazine taught me many things. First of all, that you always go surfing even though there's work to do. But what it taught me was to sit in a chair with my fingers on the keyboard and to keep my fingers on the keyboard. And if any of you are thinking about becoming screenwriters or writers in any way, the secret, I should say, you're 90% of the way there. If you sit down and put your fingers on the keyboard and don't allow yourself to take them off the keyboard, that's the secret. Okay. Carly.
Chris, I just want to going back to the pilot, and really this could be for any episode. You've watched it 100 times, you said, at least.
Yeah.
I know when I've directed or written something or produced something, after it's done, I go back and say, I wish I had done that.
Yeah.
I wish I took that, or I wish I added that. Is there anything looking back now at the pilot that you wish you had added or taken out?
It's perfect. All I see is how hard it was and the stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor. But I have to say, I think that it all begins with the script. And I'm very proud of the script, and I'm very proud of the way Robert Mandel directed it, and Daggett Sackheim produced it. And I just had a lot of really good help that made it the pilot that it is. Would I change anything?
We wouldn't change anything.
Oh, you wouldn't change anything.
I would never.
There's stuff, I'll tell you, how much time do we have? That scene where the spaceship comes down and the whirlwind and the lights, that actually worked is still amazing to me, because we went and saw a demonstration of the physical effects people, and they had a girl stand in that stood in for the actress who was on the force floor there. And she was sitting in the middle of, they had these fans that were blowing leaves, and we all started laughing because it was so hokey. It wasn't until we hired a guy named Matt Beck, who you see in the credits here. I can't believe how short the credits are. It took so few people to make the X-Files when we first started, and it ended up taking so many people when we ended. But that scene is a miracle that it ever actually is as good as it is, and I wish it were better. Okay, I'm going to scan the room and pick you because you're close.
Hi, I'm really happy that you were able to come out tonight. It's really great.
Thank you.
Really cool.
Thank you.
My question, I'm just interested on how you feel knowing that you've come full circle from being a teenager, sitting in your living room, watching a TV show and getting inspired by it and creating this killer show, both sci-fi, romance, to have everything.
Yeah.
And, I just want to know how it feels being that kid and then now being the person who inspires other kids.
Right. When kids come up, people come up to me and say, I saw this show as a kid. I think one of the reasons the show succeeded is, and I learned this really during the original conventions, we had X-Files conventions during the beginning of the show, is that I would meet a grandfather, the son of the grandfather, and the grandson or daughter of that son, and it was appealed to 3 generations of people. And I think that the reason the X-Files was a hit is that it wasn't just for one generation, it was for as many as 3 generations. And I still think that I wrote it as the kid, with a kid's mind, really. I have to say, I'll tell you another story that I don't know if I've ever told. So when I was in college, I was a baseball player, and so I took as many non-academic classes as possible because I didn't want to do any homework. I just wanted to play baseball. And one of the classes, because in high school I had made a little pottery, sitting on the potter's wheel. There's a little kick wheel with, just like they used 9,000 years ago. And I made a little pottery, so I took a pottery class because I knew that was an easy C. Anyway, my professor saw something in my ability, and he had a private studio, and he asked me, I don't know, have you heard the story? No. He asked me if I would come to work in his private studio, and I would have paid him. That's how much I loved making pottery. And I ended up working for him, and I learned how to make pottery. And I was working at Disney, and I'd still drive to his house, which was an hour and a half away, to continue making pottery for him, because I became really good at it. When I was a senior in college, I made 30,000 pieces of pottery. Wow. I ended up working in a factory. But I'm trying to think what this all leads to. Oh, I know what it leads to. So when I worked in his private studio, as I say, I became really good at it. And one of the things I could do while I was making pottery is I could watch television. And I knew everything about every television show between 1975 and 1984. So I became a student of television, and it really helped me out. And that's another answer to your question, is that I was 17 when I got that job. I was 26 when I began in Hollywood. And those are, you talk about a kid. I was still a kid when I started becoming a student of television. Okay, I'm gonna do eeny, meeny, miny, moe. Moe. Yeah.
I was just curious, Disney bought Fox, and there was talk about an animated X-Files series. Has Disney approached you, or do you know if anybody wants to do anything with X-Files, with all the reboots? And I know you did a revival, but that seems to be the way to go now, Netflix or whatever. Disney approached you with wanting to do something with the X-Files, and that they tell us anything about the animated series? What's going on with that?
I think because Jillian opted out, I think there's been less talk about, no talk about bringing the series back, even though I think there's still life in it. I'm not sure how to answer the question. There was an animated script written for the X-Files. The X-Files almost became an animated TV show, but I actually thought it didn't work. And so I thought, just let's let the X-Files sit, and let's see what happens with the X-Files. I was approached about 6 weeks ago by Disney / Fox, asking me if I would meet a writer, actually a bestseller, who wrote Star Wars books, who had an idea for an X-Files novel. And I said yes, and I heard her pitch. I read her pitch, and then I heard the pitch, and I actually thought it was really good. So that might happen. So buy that book. I'm going to go scan the room and go to you, but speak up.
You mentioned earlier to me that you had a story about Antarctica. You want to tell that
Oh
story?
yeah, you asked me about, you've been out, and she's been to Antarctica, and she says when she watches the first movie, it reminds her of her trip. Okay, so I wrote a script recently, and it was, I met somebody who is amazing, and she is a swimmer, and her name is Lynn Cox, and she wrote a book called Swimming to Antarctica, and she literally has swum in the ocean in Antarctica, among other things. She swam the Bering Strait. She set a record for the English Channel when she was 15. She's one of the most amazing people I've ever met, and also one of the kindest, most generous, sweetest, amazing woman, and I want to get her movie made because she had a relationship. You may have heard this on This American Life. Do you guys ever listen to This American Life? There was recently an episode about her and a experience she had with a baby whale that got separated from its mother. And I want to tell that story because it is a wonderful story of perseverance and talk about don't give up. That's that story. Okay, I'm scanning. Wait, I'll look past you. I'll come back to you. Yeah.
In your mind, what do you think Mulder and Scully were doing on December 22nd, 2012?
September 22nd.
December 22nd.
December.
Oh, what were they doing? At the end of the world?
Yeah, the date, the Mayan calendar date.
Oh gosh, I thought about it, and I think it figured in and factored into a story that I had conceived. But what were they doing?
Yeah, what did they do when the world ended?
What did they do when the world's ending? I think I wrote about it, but I actually don't remember. And I will say they were probably, Mulder was probably eating sunflower seeds, and Scully was probably doing an autopsy. I think it's safe to say. I'm going to go to you right here.
Okay, so, not really a question, but I guess it kind of is, but when you know, when I spoke to you earlier today and I told you the show basically saved my life because it was during a very dark time in my life.
Yeah.
It came along and it was the greatest thing, so I really look forward to the week. And I've talked with so many other X-Files fans who call it just like I do to a comfort show.
Yeah.
Did you ever think when you wrote the show that it would become that for so many people?
A comfort show? I wanted it to be the opposite of a comfort show. I wanted it to be as scary as you could do on television. And I wanted it to be even scarier than that. And I'll tell you a quick story. You may have heard this story because I've told it to an episode that you may have heard of called Home. It's a scary episode. And by the time it aired, which is in the 4th season, the show, as for the executives, was kind of on autopilot. It's like they didn't have to think about it. And so the script comes in, and this is a great script. And we make the episode, and it's brilliantly directed by Kim Manners. And it's got Karen Connell playing the mother under the bed. Karen, one of the nicest people I know. Anyway, the show airs, and I get a call from an executive screaming at me. Actually, the same guy who I sold the show with, Peter Roth, screaming at me, saying, "You can never do anything like this again." I'm getting calls from executives in New York City. People, who were in the upper echelon, people I would never have any dealings with, saying, "What are you doing out there? Are you paying any attention?" It's become one of the most beloved episodes, but it actually affected the show after that. It's the aftermath of that was they watched us like hawks. And so just anything you watch that comes after the 4th season, know that we had, people bearing down on us trying to make sure we didn't do anything too scary. Okay, I'm gonna brave it and go way in the back again.
I'm just wondering, what was your inspiration, or where did you get the idea to bring in Lone Gunmen?
Oh, the Lone Gunmen. Well, these writers that I mentioned before, Morgan and Wong, created these characters named the Lone Gunmen for an episode I think called EBE, and they became a staple of the show. And Frank Spotnitz, Vince Gilligan, you may have heard of him, and John Scheiben wanted to do a show that revolved around, actually starred the Lone Gunmen, which I remember there were people that worked on King of the Hill who already talked about its demise as soon as we came up with the series idea, because they were sure that these 3 guys could never carry a show. I still think it's one of the funniest things that was done as a result of the X-Files. But it was those 3 guys who wanted to do it is the reason it actually got done. I hope I answered your question. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go to this end of the room. Wait a second.
I know, I already asked one.
Okay, I'm going to ask her then.
She's pointing at me because she's afraid to ask questions.
Okay, I'll ask you.
Okay, I'll stand up. I'll try to be loud. I have 2 questions, actually. Number 1 is, and Carly kind of asked this about pilot, but do you have any regrets about, over the course of the series, anything that you wish you'd done differently? And number 2 is, what are you currently watching on TV these days?
Oh, I'm sorry, what was your first question?
Do you have any regrets over the course of the series? Anything that you wish that you had done differently?
Oh, over the course of the series.
Yeah.
I'm not going to answer that question exactly, but I'll tell you an interesting fact. Is that there's the show's mythology probably, and that actually the show had a mythology is kind of amazing, because everyone did episodic television, in which was every show was different. No one ever had, or I should say, there were recurring relationship stories, but nothing quite like the mythology of the show. So, in answering your question, I'm going to give you another take on it. Is that the mythology, once we started writing it, the most amazing thing is you build this mythology, and then it starts to write itself, which is an amazing thing, because you've accumulated all these facts and all these characters, and it kind of took on a life of its own, which is an amazing thing. What was your second question?
What are you currently watching on TV these days?
Oh, I just watched a series that I absolutely love on HBO. It's a 4-part series. I just watched it twice, called Olive Kittredge. It actually, not a lot of people know it, but I'm going to suggest that you watch it, because Frances McDormand is awesome as this character, Olive Kittredge. What else am I watching? I watch, like everybody, I watch Succession. And they created a whole new language on television, which is, vulgar and foul and mean, and we can't get enough of it. What else am I watching? What can't I get enough of? I watched My Brilliant Friend, and I'm currently watching the 3rd season of that. What else? What's that?
Vince's shows.
Oh, I love Vince's shows. I think that Breaking Bad is a masterpiece. And it actually, when you see how beautifully that show is done, you realize how beautiful his contribution to the X-Files was. Yeah. Okay, you? Yeah.
So first, I would say thank you so much for being here. Thank you for creating the X-Files. I started watching the show when I was 10 years old, so I learned a lot of lessons where I learned it's okay if people think you're weird and spooky. And then slowly I learned that it's okay to be smart and stand up for yourself and what is right. So thank you so much for that.
Thanks.
My question is, of all the characters that you've had a hand in creating in this series, do you have a particular favorite one?
Well, obviously, the obvious answer. But a favorite one, monsters or actual characters?
Either or. Your choice.
I like the Brian Thompson bounty hunter character a lot. I thought he was a go-to guy. Who else did I really love? I have to say, he had a very small part in the X-Files, but I love him as an actor, Terry O'Quinn, who was a guy who played Peter Watts on Millennium, a show I could talk about at length too, but I don't want to, I guess I could sit here and talk all night long, but I won't. Anyway, those are two who come immediately, jump into mind. Yeah. 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 Basically what drives me? Is that what helps you keep going? What helps me keep going? What helps me not give up? Yeah. I'm going to tell you a quick story about that not give up. I told this story earlier today, which everyone knows from the second movie. I love this. There was a guy, he's now deceased, named Houston Smith. He wrote about mythology, he wrote about folklore, he wrote about the mystical. Anyway, I got to see him speak one night, and he was captivating and told stories that were so wonderful. And at the end of the, I realized one of the reasons I'm having trouble hearing is I've got background noise. He told amazing stories. We got to the end of the night, and there was a question. Someone said, and it was kind of a cringe-worthy question, how would you sum up your personal philosophy? Which was kind of asking for the Houston Smith bumper sticker. And I kind of cringed, but Houston Smith took it in stride and kind of looked around, and just as the kind of mystical person that he was, he said, "Don't give up." And he says, "That's the answer." And I thought, that is the answer, don't give up. And if you can keep that in mind, and you can sit and put your fingers on the keyboard, I can tell you another story about that, but I won't belabor the answer. That's the secret, perseverance. If you have an idea, follow that idea to the end, and you might come up with something great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. How many more?
Sorry, everybody. I'm the bad guy.
No, it's all right.
Yeah, it's okay, though.
Okay.
I'm good. Few more questions.
Time stop.
I wish it did.
9 minutes.
Pull the batteries out of the
I
car.
need
Well, I'll tell you the 9-minute story. Mulder, David Duchovny, when we lost 9 minutes, he gave me a book that he actually regrets giving me because, do you know this story? No. He gave me The Bridges of Madison County. I don't know why. But on the page, the inside page, the title page, he wrote, "I want my 9 minutes back." Okay, I'm gonna go to you.
Okay, so at the museum, I noticed some very sexy photos of David.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that photo shoot?
It was an amazing photo shoot. You're talking about the Rolling Stone center spread. And I was the centerfold. Still is either one of the dumbest things or most unlikely things in the world. That I was lying there with David and Jillian with my shirt off under the covers, looking like we had just finished something. It was a thrill, but the thing that I really regret about that whole experience is that if you remember the cover, there's a monster holding Jillian in its arms, and they asked me to be that monster, and I showed up late, and they had to stick somebody else in that monster suit, and I would have, like the song says, I would have been on the cover of Rolling Stone. Where's Kelly? I gotta keep. I gotta keep Kelly at bay. Okay, I'm gonna go way in the back. You, yeah.
Okay, I just thought of this question earlier, because
Yeah.
you said you imagined the X-Files as being the opposite of a comedy show.
Yeah.
But it's one of the funniest shows. The comedy episodes
Yeah.
are amazing.
Yeah.
So funny. So, did the decision to do comedy episodes and have fun with it, did that come sort of later on? When you created it, did you think this is going to be dark and serious and straight down the line, and then you decided later on that you could do comedy?
Yeah.
Or was it something you always had in the back of your mind, I wonder if somewhere?
Come on, there's some funny lines in the pilot. The humor was kind of built in, but it was laconic humor, Mulder humor, and so the show had a lightness to it that went with the darkness. But it wasn't until the episode Humbug that we realized the show could handle comedy, and then you could come right back with a mythology episode. The show was so flexible, and people went with it. The audience, you guys, you went with the, completely different texture, tone, and theme, and week after week, and all of a sudden we got this idea that we could continue doing those kinds of episodes. And now I think we could have come back season 10 and 11, do all comedy episodes, and people would have cheered. So I think the show is known by a lot of people best for its comedy. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go to you.
It's so funny. She stole the question out of my mouth earlier. You were talking earlier about like regrets, and I was wondering if your perspective has changed since you produced the pilot versus watching it again today. Like, if you are more critical on yourself in the past versus how you are now, or if it's worked the other way around as you've gone on and improved your skills and confidence in show writing. If going back, you're looking at like, wow, with the knowledge I have now, if I was writing that pilot, would it, would be a bit different.
Well, personally, I think I could do no wrong. The things that I'm writing a lot right now. The things I've written recently are nothing like the X-Files. And it's like going back to square one and doing something that's completely different, thematically, in a different vein, in a different genre. And it's funny how when people get a script from me now, they want it to be the X-Files. And so I do question myself sometimes that have I gone down the wrong path? Am I going out on too many limbs? But I'm doing kind of what I love to do right now, and that's to explore new characters in new ways.
Keeping your hands on the keyboard.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Go. You guys I've answered your question. Have I answered a question for you before? No.
Hi, Chris. Thank you. Just random thought, but Stephen King is, I'm a huge fan of his work.
Yeah.
I noticed that one episode was written by him. How did that come to be? And did you guys have a relationship? And was there anything after that?
Yeah. He came to me. He was a fan of the show. Said he'd like to write an episode. I said, maybe. No, I mean, we jumped at the chance, and he wrote the episode Chinga. And it's a beloved episode. I got to work closely on it with him, which it's like weird. It's like here's Stephen King, this icon, this master, and he's asking me what I think and for notes. And it was a position I never think I would have thought I would find myself in. So it was. I actually remember telling this story on the Conan O'Brien show. Can you believe I was on the Conan O'Brien show? And the show was ultimately not called Chinga because that's a curse word. And you know, does anyone remember what that show was called? Sorry, what was it?
Bung Honey.
Bung Honey. So I told that story on the Conan O'Brien show, and I got a big laugh because Bung Honey sounds even more obscene than Chinga. Anyway. Yeah.
So obviously making a television show is very stressful and a lot of work, but there had to be a lot of really good parts. What aspects of the show still being on the air and that whole process do you miss the most?
I can answer that question with absolute heartfelt certainty, which is the esprit de corps, that you're actually working with a group of people that come together every day for between 14 and 17 hours at that time and work together and come up with something that is the X-Files. And it was that experience of working collaboratively that, and believe me, it was hard, and there were lots of pitfalls and lots of disagreements, but it's that esprit de corps that is the reason to do it. Okay, Kelly? Jim? Can I answer a couple more questions?
One more.
One more question?
One more.
You choose.
Where's the hand? Where's the hand? This is really hard.
Okay, she's.
Yeah, way in the
Yes,
back.
yes, speak loud.
So, Chris, earlier, you signed the.
These people came from the UK, so.
So I gave you the copy of Irresistible to sign earlier, and you said that it inspired Millennium.
Yeah.
So one of the things we both wanted to ask was, can you elaborate on that? Like,
Yeah.
how did it inspire Millennium?
If you remember, there's a character named Donnie Faster in Irresistible. And he was he wasn't a paranormal character. He was kind of a serial killer. And immediately I thought, you know, I love Silence of the Lambs, and I like the idea that we're approaching the Millennium, and maybe I can tell stories with a character kind of like Frank Black. And it came together, and that show, directed beautifully by David Nutter, launched the 3 years, 60-odd episodes of Millennium. And I still wish that show were on the air. I love doing it. But it was too hard to do. Too hard to do 2 series at the same time. Okay, they're giving me the hook. And I hope that I've added something to your long travels that you and most of you took to get here, and made it worth your while in some way or another. Thanks. I hope everyone got to meet Patricia, because she's here from Vancouver.
Yes.
Patricia came from Vancouver, and she worked gentleman named Bill Terazakis, who did a lot of the monsters that you created the monsters, made the monster masks, and all of the other things that went along with the monsters. He was our go-to guy. Actually, in the pilot, there was a guy named Toby Lindola that made the nosebleed still amazingly. That girl in the diner, the soda shop. Anyway, but Bill Terazakis worked on the show for a really long time. I considered him a friend. He did not only did great work, he was a person like at the end of the series, he'd give you a gift. He just like you went the extra step to make a connection, and he died recently. And we were fortunate enough to have Bill's shop, and Patricia is a representative of Bill's shop. We had the good fortune, I should say Jim and Kelly had the good fortune, to get all of the molds and monsters that Bill Terazakis created. So you guys all have Patricia to thank, and her son who is here, who's never seen an X-Files episode. Okay, I guess I'm talking again.
All right, he's got a few words to say. Now, you go right ahead.
You're pretty sure what I have to say, so after you.
All right, I just want to say, from me and Kelly, get over it. You're not going to hide the waves. Come on, come on. I just want to say that all you coming here from the bottom of our heart, it means the world, We've been doing this a long time to save the history of the X-Files. One prop at a time. That's kind of my slogan, this, what Chris has done, the show, and everybody behind the scenes, what it's done for my life. It put me on a better path, and I want to pay back to Chris and everybody that worked on the show what that show did for me, and I want to preserve and protect everything. I don't want it separated. I don't want it destroyed. When I die, that stuff's coming with me.
No, it's not.
And Chris, from the bottom of my heart, this is a dream come true for me. You being here, meeting you, it's just, life can't get any better right now. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm glad, But I couldn't do most of the stuff without my wife, she's still, she's the anchor for everything, Would you like to say a few words? Go ahead, come on.
I just want to thank you all, and I, hope you all enjoyed what you got to see today.
Okay, there you go.
And I just wanted to say, let's hear it for Jim and Kelly. Come on. All over the world. Thank you. Ooh. Oh, gosh, shame we get some rest. Fantastic. Thanks for coming, everybody. How about we get a little chuckle beat dance here real quick?
I was this close. I gotta get more. Come on.
Please.
like an alien.